coming in. I think I'm a little bit late here, and I definitely apologize for that, but thank you for showing up here. My name is Paul, and I am with Freight Connect, and we're working to do some big things to really help out in our industry, in the trucking community. There's a lot of things that happened this week, as it seems like that's a regular event. And let's see, I just need to get some lighting, I think, more lighting, better lighting in here. But at any rate, there's so many things that have been going on in the trucking industry. But when I say the trucking industry, I'm talking about more than just the trucking industry. I'm talking about um, uh, because so many things are affect the trucking industry. And not only that, there are so many things that the trucking industry impacts. And so there's a lot of things to look at. And you try to decide what is it that you're going to focus in on? What is it that's going to really be a benefit to you? Um, I don't know. You'd have to decide that on your own. But I can definitely say this that um, you probably aren't wrong by thinking about things that impact the economy. So anything that would impact the economy, maybe it doesn't have a direct impact on you or the trucking industry, but it's definitely tied in. One of the things that we have talked about is what the economy is. It's made up of the consumer, which is a big part of it. I think consumers make up like 70% of GDP, I believe that is. I have to look that up, but that's huge. Um, then you also have the entrepreneur. You've also got, and that includes you, can include you, the entrepreneur. You can be the consumer, and you can be the laborer as well. And then there's also the investor. You can be that too. But those four components, and then you have a lot of other things that surround that make up the economy. Okay. And trucking is a huge part of it. And so there's some things that I wanted to talk about today. Basically, I'm going to keep it simple. Two things. It is Good Friday. Happy Good Friday to everyone. Um, there is something at the end I want to mention in regards to Good Friday. It does have to do with the trucking industry. And also, before that, I want to talk about economic indicators. I really want to talk about it from the perspective of, again, there are things that we see on TV that we really don't think about when it comes to what we do, but it does have an effect, an impact on our industry. And I think that we should keep an eye open about those things. All right. I think that we should monitor those things. We did put out an article yesterday and then also tied in with it a snapshot of what's called Freight Plus, or I'm sorry, Freight Pulse. I always want to call it Plus, but Freight Pulse. And basically, it's giving a pulse. What we put out yesterday is giving a snapshot of the economy. All right. The pulse of the economy. There are so many different indicators that we can look at that give us an idea as to what's going on out there in the market. But there are some things that you want to know, some indicators you want to know about, and probably follow. And it'll give you some good insight as to what has happened in the market, what is going on now, and what we can expect to happen. And if you can know a little bit of that, it may give you the opportunity to make different decisions, to make decisions that can really be a benefit to you. All right. And then what do we do with that? Not just, in terms of making a decision as to, okay, I'm going to work in this market or I'm going to work in this market, but how do I communicate with people? Right? How do I use this information so that I can communicate with others? Because when we're able to do that, it takes us to a whole nother level. When we're able to take information and use that and communicate with others, others start to trust you, like to work with you, want to work with you, will work with you. But how do we take that information? What information do we need to gather? How do we interpret it? Because it changes all the time, right? You can't stay up on it 24 hours a day. But how do I take this snapshot of this information? Not even a snapshot. I mean, we have data that goes way back, but how do we rein it in and understand it, interpret it for ourselves, come up with an idea, and then go and express this to someone that we're working to build a relationship with. Okay. A lot of people don't think about that, you know, and when we talk about sales, people don't like to talk about sales. They think it's a bad thing, but guess what? You have to do it. You have to do sales. I don't care what industry you're in, you have to do sales. Okay. That is just a part of what you have to do. You do that when you are bringing on new people, when you're recruiting, you're selling. You're giving them material about your company. You advertise, you know, even if it's just word of mouth. Okay. So you have to do these things. Think about these things for your business because there are going to be times when times are good and then when times are not so good. What are you going to do when times are not so good? Did you set yourself up for that time period or did you not? How about when times are good? Did you set yourself up for that time period or did you not? Okay. The economy, we follow the economy. The trucking industry follows the economy. The consumer is the major part of the economy. Okay. We follow that. There's a lot of things that try to influence the consumer, but if the consumer is spending money, as they say the consumer is now, then there's going to be business for us. If they're not spending money on goods, then there's not going to be as much business for us, right? Wintertime comes around, everybody hibernates. It can be slow, but people do get out to buy for the holidays, right? It's the consumer. Black Friday, what does that mean? That's talking about getting out of the red for a lot of companies and getting into the black, which is a good thing, right? So it's about the consumer, especially for small businesses. I mean, it's, you know, it's all about the consumer. So there are things that we can look at. In that we put out, we did have indicators. Let me see if I can pull this information up. Actually, let's do this. So what I want to talk about today again is about, you know, economic indicators and then how we can actually use them for our business. Okay, I forget the title that I put out there, but let's see. If the freight ain't moving, the signs already told you, right? The signs are these economic indicators. So you have to be able to understand them. You know, there's no way around it. I mean, there's no fluff around it. You need to understand economic indicators. There's no question about it. It gives you a whole different vision for your business in terms of, or how you see the industry, right? So we're not always blaming the brokers. Of course, I know that there are issues out there. There's always going to be issues out there. And we can put them in categories, right? We can talk about brokers being a problem. Brokers can talk about carriers being a problem, right? But that doesn't have anything to do with economic indicators, okay? So that can be a whole nother talk. But for now, without talking about any of the other things, we're talking about these economic indicators. How can I see what's to come or believe what's to come, have a stronger idea and maybe be able to move in the way that would benefit my company, to be able to communicate with others in a more effective way, okay? And then at the same time, when we're looking at this information, we're also looking at the past, right? We're looking at what has gone on when these economic indicators acted the way they are currently acting. All right. So we can look at the past to help us figure out what's going on today. And we can look at, excuse me, other information about the past, meaning past events, right? What happened during COVID? What happened during the Spanish flu? When we know these things, they do make a difference. All right. And the thing about it is that you're not going to understand all this right off the bat, right? You have to take it small pieces. But the thing is just don't give up. Learn about these things. And as time goes on, it'll be evident how they matter. I guarantee you that. Okay. Um, okay, so let's see, what am I gonna do here? I think you see some stuff up here behind me, right? You see some indicators, and these indicators were, um, yeah, let's see here. I guess, let me see if I point over here, point over here. Oh, this is interesting. I guess this is, let me see if I can, I'm going to try and change my screen, see if I can work this in a different way. Boy, I tell you, I need more lighting. Um, see if I can make me small here. And oh, there we go. I like that. Oh, okay. I'll have to pull that up. I think I'm still going to have to find another video sharing platform. Okay. All right, I'm back. All right, let's see. Backdrop. Okay. Let's see if this is going to work. If this will allow me to do this. I'm just trying to move myself out of the way. All right. Okay, you know what? Maybe it's doing it and I can't see it on my end. I don't know, but because I can't see it on my end, I'm not gonna be able to do what I want to do. But that's okay. All right. So at any rate, so here we have right here. There it is. That there. So it says retail sales, right? And then behind me we have, what is that? Consumer confidence. And then you have consumer sentiment. I don't think that these are actual, um, I don't think these are actual trend lines. I don't think. And then we have the Dow Jones over here. And then way over here behind me, oh, we've got, okay, so I'm going to tell you what these are. So we have retail sales, we have consumer confidence and consumer sentiment. Then we also have the Dow Jones, where you have different Dow Joneses. You have the Dow Jones Industrial, which is the one that's well known, and then you also have the one for transportation. Okay, so you have the Dow Jones Transportation, and I don't know if you ever knew that, but if you think about the initials, they are DJT. So DJTA for average, but DJT for the Dow Transportation, Dow Jones Transportation Average. And then over here, what is that? Okay, then you've got our little gauge over here, all right? So we are in development of that gauge, and that is going to take a lot of indicators. Let's see, is it right here? No, it's here. No, it's here. Here we go. All right, right there. So that's going to take all these indicators and it's going to put it together and give us an idea as to what the pulse of the economy is like for us, as far as in the trucking industry. Is it expanding? Is it contracting? Is it stable? And we're going to have some other gauges as well that we're going to put together. But that would be, you'd be able to look at that in a snapshot, just see what's going on in the economy. What does it look like for us? Now, it's going to be at a high level, right? I mean, we're looking at on a macro level, not looking at it granularly or on a state by state, city by city, or anything like that. But we're looking at it on a macro level, okay? And so that is when we did put the numbers in, it showed that we were in a contracting state, contracting stage. This one here, this is just for illustration purposes. Okay, so beyond that, here's what I want to do. Thinking about the stock market, a lot of people think maybe the stock market doesn't apply to them. I mean, some of us play in the market, some of us don't. But in terms of our business, as far as trucking goes, transportation, I think it definitely has some, we need to have some knowledge of it, okay? And so I'm just going to explain it real quickly and then talk about the other ones, the ones at the top, and just kind of bring it all together, okay? And this will correlate with the information that we did send out yesterday. You can actually find the article that we wrote on our blog at elevatefr8.com, and then go to blog, and it'll be the most recent article. And it talks about, it does highlight these indicators, which is retail, consumer sentiment, consumer confidence, and it gives us an idea as to what's going on in the market. Is it favorable for us or not? And then we talk about how do we address that. Okay, so at any rate, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is what most people are familiar with. But we also have the Dow Jones Transportation Average. Now, the thing about them is this, just to know a little bit about them, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is compiled of like the 30 top countries, 30 top companies in the country. All right. And these are ones that are huge, blue chip money making stocks. And we're talking about the likes of Walmart, Johnson and Johnson, Microsoft is on there, I believe. Nvidia is on there, I believe. What else? There is, I have to look at the list, but there are some huge, Coca-Cola is on there. So there's some big companies that are listed. There's 30 top, right? So if you take the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ and you pick these 30s from there, these are the ones that are pretty heavily weighted. It's kind of like when you think of big tech, your Meta and Microsoft and Apple, and I think Tesla's still considered, and whatever other ones there are, the big seven. They're such heavyweights, right? I mean, you can just focus on them to kind of determine what's going on. Really, you can't. I mean, they're such heavyweights, right? But they have so much weight, right? I think it's like 30%, I think, of the market. They're just huge, But, if you have your stock in them, you're probably doing pretty good, especially now, at least stable. But the Dow Jones Industrial, it's the 30 top companies that are measured or that are watched. And it comes up, they developed the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and you can follow that and just to kind of get an idea of the health of these companies that are on the stock exchange. Then you have the Dow Jones Transportation Average. Now that's compiled of the 20 top transportation companies. All right. Now I said top 20 transportation companies. That does not necessarily mean they're all going to be in trucking, because they're not. Right. We have other modes of transportation, and then we also have other companies that operate in transportation. But some of those companies can be FedEx, UPS, Landstar. Let's see who else. I wonder if Maersk on there. I don't know if they are. But then you have, like I say, some other companies that are railroad companies. You have air. Then you also have ocean. So they're all compiled in this index. Now, the thing about it is this. When the Dow Jones came out, the first index was transportation. It wasn't the Dow Jones Industrial. It was transportation. That goes back to 1884. And that was used just because commerce was so huge, back then. I mean, we're talking about the Industrial Revolution back then, and, transportation, the expansion, and all that going on. But that is what was used, and it still does exist. And a lot of people look at that to get an idea as to if we're on an uptrend or if we're on a downtrend in terms of demand. Is demand going up? Is it going down? The transportation index is used for that. And so those that do follow the Dow Jones Industrial Average, they will use the Dow Jones Transportation to help confirm, what is going on. Are we really in a demand market, or are we in a decline? So these are used. Now, here's the thing. We are in this industry. We're in the transportation industry, right? Now, our names might not be on this index, right? We might not be one of the top 20. That's fine. But we do play in that industry. And so for us to watch it and see what's going on, is it expanding or is it contracting? it does affect us, right? With these big companies, when these big companies are doing well, then there's business for us. When they're not doing so well, there's not so much business for us, right? We have to then scramble around, look for other opportunities, right? We really have to hustle at that point because they're swooping up all the freight, they're giving lower rates and they can do that. And then it's challenging for us, for us who have the one truck, two truck, 10 trucks, 20 trucks, it can be challenging, right? But at the same time, it's good to know. So when we look at this information, what do we do with it? One of the things is I was just looking at it recently. I was playing around with it. Let me see if I can pull it up. And what I was looking at was how these two interplay. And they correlate. When one goes up, the other goes up. When one goes down, the other goes down. Why? Well, that's because the idea is if the industrials are doing well, then they have a need to move freight, right? And if they're not doing so well, well, then there's probably going to be a hard time in freight. Okay. So that's the idea. It doesn't always mean that that is happening, right off the bat. I mean, it could be, I don't know, there could be several reasons why there is this divergence or that there is this upward trend or downward trend, but it might not be anything major. But I'm sorry, I'm just looking to see if I can find it. There's one thing I'm looking for. All right. Well, I don't see it. Okay. You know what? I think I know where it's at. Let me see here. All right. I don't have it here, but maybe next time I can show you guys that. Basically, you can go and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and try this just so that I can see if I can pull it up, and then we can take a look at it. No, all right. Let's see here. Dow Jones. I'm just typing in Dow Jones. You might have done this before. Here we go. And then let's just compare. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can pull this up on my screen, share it with you. I think this is the one. Yeah, that's what we're going to share. Okay. So as far as I can see, yeah, it looks like I am sharing. So what I did was I just went in here and I typed in Dow Jones. Okay. And there it is. All right. So we can see this here is just for one day, right? But if we go here, I'm even going to go back. Let's see. Let's just do there's 5 days. Let's do for a month. All right. So we can see here the Dow Jones just traveling along here at 40,500. And this is over the past, what, 1 month. Okay. So we're looking at March, going back to March. What is this? March 18th. So it says, okay, March 18th. We're just traveling along. And then all of a sudden we take a dip. And can anybody guess what that is? What happened here? A lot of times it's just knee-jerk reaction to things. But right here is April the 2nd, which was Liberation Day. All right. And we dropped. Okay. And that's over, what was it, a 2-day period, and then 3-4 day period, I guess, to April 7th. I think we had a weekend there because I think that was a Thursday. And then we shot back up. All right. And then the market's kind of corrected itself. There was a lot of selling going here. Then people maybe picked up some stuff thinking they could, they get a deal on some of this discounted stock. And then it just kind of rode along the bottom. And here we are today. We're at 39,142. Now, if we take this out, say 6 months, that takes us into last year. How far back do we go to last year? Okay, this is good. So I'm even going to go a year. So we can go back and then just follow this. And I'm not going to get political, but these are things to look at. Okay, so instead of us just looking at one day to kind of see what's going on between yesterday and today, we can go back, we can go back 5 years. We can go back more than that, but just going back to the election. So we had the presidential election that was back here when November, where am I at? Went back a year. Okay, here we are, February, my bad. So we're going to go here and we're going to, yeah, we do. We got to go back. Oh, I thought it was a year ago. I'm sorry. So here we are, January. We're going back to November, November the 2nd. All right. So here we can see prior to the election, 37.7. And we're getting closer to the election, probably building up many anticipate. I don't know when Biden dropped out of the election. I don't remember when that happened. Maybe it was, no, I'm sure it was way before that. Maybe somewhere in here. But here was the election, and look what happened. Man, the stock market just shot up like a rocket, right? So it took this big hike. All right, then he's not in office, but he will be November, December, January, in a couple of months. So the stock market is riding up high, doing well, doing very well. It reaches a peak here. I think it hits 45 somewhere. Maybe that was here. There we go, 45. And then we're looking at January the 20th. So inauguration day, right? So here we are. We're still going up, up, up. And then we take a dive. Now, I think right here, this was at the 20-day mark. And maybe this was, I think tariffs were really being talked about. I don't know if that was when the first tariffs came out, which was imposed on China. I believe it was 10%, I think. But obviously we get into March, and March, we take a dive. We take a deep dive, right? And then we go on into through March, and then we come up to April, and guys, look, and gals, April the 2nd. Where do we go? Man, uh, I mean, just looking at it, that's just, I mean, this reminds me of when we have holiday freight, right? When holiday seasons come around. So you've got Christmas during the transportation, for transportation, it just drops off. I mean, you guys know what it's like. You go all the way up to close to Christmas, and then the freight just drops off, right? Right after Christmas, right into January, it just drops off. And it's that way with major holidays, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, it just drops off. And that's what this looks like. But what happens is, because everybody's on vacation at that point, nobody's moving freight. And then it goes back up for transportation. The volume, it goes back up and it just motors on. But we see here, there are things that are going on that's keeping it at this level. And if we look at it and then we travel back, we go all the way back to August of 2024 when we see the numbers, at that level. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is real quick, I'm going to add the, I'm going to add the DI or DJTA. Okay. See, that's see, that's automotive. That's not what I want, but you can look at that. Here we go. So we've got it for, nope, that's automotive. But hey, look at automotive. That's a good one. Here we are with automotive. Took a dive, April 2nd. There we go. So I think there was some good news that came out for automotive. I mean, I can't keep up with all the news, but I think that's why we see this upward trend here. Okay. But still, see if I can get it in here. I don't know why it won't come up. All right. Dow Jones Transportation. There it is. All right, here we go. So that is in red. And again, They're mirroring each other. It's like one is right across from the other. Look at that. One is right across. So we've got, remember, this is the 20 top transportation companies. Then we've got the 30 top companies, right? And they are mirroring each other. Look at that. So with transportation, um, now we can say, okay, so the industrial uh, came along. Yeah, right. Wow. Okay. So there is this. Now, there are other things, other indicators, and I'm sorry I got lost in that, but there are other indicators that we can look at. And I'm going to see if I can pull up something else here. Um, okay, yeah, so here's the last article that we wrote. And with that, what we did was we added Pulse to it just so that you can kind of see here looking to do. So this here is a snapshot which was from April 16th. That was yesterday, all right? And we decided to select three. Actually, for this here, we selected two. We did retail sales and consumer confidence. And the reason why we did that, retail sales came out yesterday, right, the report. And the current values that, in terms of the change, it was a 1.4 increase in retail sales. And so that looks pretty good, right? That looks pretty good. So if we have sales happening, retail sales, and that means trucking should be looking pretty good, right? That's what you want. You want this to be expanding. You want this to be a plus, right? Because if it's not, then that means there's not much sales going on, right? Now you want to look at it over a longer period of time, but just looking at this individual report, that's what we get. Then what we provide here is what it was like the month before. So there was a little uptick in February, right? And then we look at the difference between a year ago. Here's the year. A year ago, it was an increase of 2.6 at that time. And then we look at the month over month change, the year over year change. That's what mom and YOY is. It's year over year. Then you have the trend. All right. And then this is when it normally comes out, this reading. So we put all this information here. We make it really easy for you to see it here. Okay, we're going to eventually have graphs that you can see. You can click so you can see the trend line. But this is what looks like. So you need to then do a deeper dive and find out more about it. And we did write about it in the blog. You can go back to the blog because we did write about retail and consumer confidence, so you can get a deeper dive on it. And when you get the deeper dive, you start a picture starts to come to appear, and you're able then to figure out what's really going on. Okay, so here implications for trucking. Well, tariffs of 25% on auto and parts has spurred panic buying. Okay, now what happened was the reason why this looks pretty decent is because there was a purchase of cars in March. There was an increase of 5.3% increase in auto and parts purchases. The reason being was because of the threat of the 25% tariff. So basically, we'll call that, I'm going to call that panic buying. Remember that from COVID? There was some panic buying going on. Now, can we anticipate there be more panic buying happening? Of course we can, right? And what does panic buying do? That leaves shelves bare, okay? And then we have higher prices because there is a higher demand for things. So we experienced this through COVID, right? Now, also what we experienced through COVID was that there was a demand for trucks as well. So then can we anticipate that there will be a demand for trucks? I think that we can. I think that there will be, people will want to buy and spend money and need to, especially on essential items. and they're gonna need to get it out of the warehouses and get it to the to the shelves. Now, what's going to happen after that? I don't know, because consumers, with the price increase of things, people obviously are going to pull back, and there will be more specific items that will need to ship for sure, but we're not going to have panic buying, right? So things could slow down after that. So what we're looking at when we look at that, just a little bit that I mentioned here, that we could see an increase in purchases by consumers. And then we see that adjust downward. Now, part of that, without me going through all that, I can go down here to consumer confidence and look at that and say, okay, what is going on here? Consumer, the current value is 92.9. Now, that was a decrease month over month of 7.2 points. Okay. Previous month was 100.1. We can see the difference here. It went down. All right. From a year ago to now, it went down. This is consumer confidence. How are consumers feeling? How are they feeling about things? Right. And that is a telltale sign. This here, consumers are thinking of holding back. So if they're thinking about holding back, but they spent money here, well, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. That was, they purchased vehicles, and it was due to the tariffs. So that is like they are expressing their concern. I better go buy a vehicle. I know someone that said that that's what they were going to do before these tariffs go in place. So it's not because they didn't purchase just because they have money and they want to spend it. They were being strategic themselves. Okay. Just like importers here in America were bringing over product from overseas, pulling it forward in December at the end of the year, and then also trying to do it here at the new year. Okay. So that pull forward is to avoid the tariffs. Okay. So implication for trucking, declining confidence points to soften future freight demand as consumers grow cautious. Okay. Panic buying may happen now, but slow down could follow. Okay. So that is exactly what we're looking at here. Okay. We have, well, going up here, recent policy impact, the tariffs for sure. Recent policy impacts, fear upcoming cost is creating temporary boost in spending. So the upcoming cost of things. So that, again, we could experience some panic buying. So here, why this indicator matters. We're talking about retail sales. Okay. I mean, this is going to matter because if consumers are making purchases on the retail side, then the demand is going to go up, or there is a demand and there's a need for trucking. If that dries up, then there's not going to be a need, right? We have to figure out how we're going to move freight, how this matters to the shipper. So it's good to know more than just how does it impact you as a carrier. It's good to know about your customer. It's good to know what they're going through, all right? So if your product is moving faster due to tariff fears or consumer rush, your freight capacity strategy needs to be adjusted quickly. So if you're experiencing this adjustment, we're talking about the shipper, they're going to have to make some adjustments. And with this information, it's how do you then communicate with either your customer, the shipper, or the prospect as the shipper? Okay. Maybe this is someone you just started working with, or you've been working with for a while, or you've been communicating with and have never worked with before. But if you are armed with this information and understanding some things and how it impacts them, maybe then you can come to them in a different way. to communicate with them in a way that it creates conversation, and you're able to talk to them about these things and start to build more rapport with them, develop a relationship to the point where they see you as more than just someone carrying their freight. See you as someone who is in the know and someone that can provide them with more, can provide them with insight and knows what they're talking about. Retail sales, especially auto sales, was hot because of tariffs. How is your freight covered now? We could lock in a plan to help you avoid a scramble later. Not saying you have to say this, but this is an idea of how you can approach them, okay? Of how you can approach a shipper. I mean, you can approach anyone, any shipper with this. I mean, you want to know about them, right? So here, same thing. And you can combine these things and you can talk about it. I mean, you don't have to come out and say, hey, I read that retail sales was doing this and it was this a year ago, and it's up by 1.2 year over year. No, I mean, you talk it in your own voice, right? You communicate in your own way. Okay. These are things that we can talk about, but this is information that we're going to be putting out. So we just have these two that are listed, but we have several other ones, that we'll be putting out the information on a weekly basis, and you'll be able to look at that and get some of these little key talking points that can help you in your conversations. Okay. And then again, we'll be having our indicators here, our gauges. Okay. Now here, we click on that. It takes us right to where this information comes from. Oh, look at this. Oh, wow. Okay. And we can read about what is going on and get a deeper dive, have a deeper dive about it, and really, really gain an understanding. And then you start to see things in a different way. You start to see, you just start to see things in a different way. Again, what does this have to do with the broker? Nothing. It has nothing to do with the broker, right? That's not what we're talking about. The conference board, the committee that makes those decisions or that puts out the survey. You know, there's the University of Michigan. I believe they do the consumer sentiment survey. But there's a lot of good information here. Okay. And then it helps you to be more than just a carrier, more than just a driver. I mean, drivers, this is good for you. Brokers is good for you. Carriers, dispatchers, this is really good information. Okay. One other thing that we'll be providing as well. See if I can get there. Is it here? I don't know where it is. Interesting. Well, it's not here. Okay. Sorry, I guess I can't get there. But, oh yeah, here we are. I didn't see it earlier. At any rate, call scripts. So what we are going to do is, I mean, there are different situations, like I said, the information evolves, it changes, from day to day. You can pull up an indice. Well, let me go back. Most of them, they adjust month over month. Okay. And it's not at the same time each month. Like this one here is mid-month. It can be on the 15th, can be on the 16th. Then there are others that this one here is the last Tuesday of each month. There are others that do adjust weekly. None adjust daily, not the ones that we use. Some quarterly. I think it's GDP. I think it's on a quarterly basis. So this information, it does change. But just because it changed from one month to the other, went up or down, it doesn't have anything to do with, 6 months down the road. You want to look at it in a trend. And what I mean by that, the past 6 months or the past year, you want to look at that. And we'll be able to provide that information as well. But with that, since it changes so much, there may be different conversations that you would have. Okay. There would be different conversations that you would have, different conversations based upon the equipment type you have, because you're going to be moving different things, and that makes a difference. Flatbed's not going to be moving ice cream, So the conversations will vary, but we work to put together a script. And this here is, and this will change as well. So as we put out the information, we'll give you different scripts that you can use. I mean, when we put out the information at the beginning of the week, you'll be able to see what's going on in the freight industry, with those indices, and you'll be able to get some deep dive information. And then we have scripts that we can provide to help you addressing whoever it is that you're communicating with. So if you're talking to a broker, this would be a script that you could use. Okay. If you're talking to a shipper, this is the script that you can use as a client, your existing client base, current customer. And then if you're talking to a prospect, here you go. You'll be able to use this. Okay. Now, especially when we're talking about a prospect, there is more to it than, just providing this information. Look at this. I mean, we even have the objective. What is the objective here for each? So that gets you in the mind frame of, how you're targeting these opportunities. So we give you some direction and then we provide you with scripting. Okay. And then you can say it in your own voice. Okay. It doesn't mean you have to say it exactly how it sounds here. You can make it, you don't even have to use any of this, but this here is based upon the indicators, that information that is provided so that you can communicate with them effectively. But not only that, so that you can be in the know. Watch this. If you are doing this, if you're following just this, there's something else we're going to be offering. But if you're just following this over, say, 6 months, right? Over even less than that, because we're planning to put this out on a weekly basis. But if you follow this over a 6-month time period, a year's time period, I would say a year. And the reason I say that is because it just makes sense. I've always told people that, if you got into the trucking business, you want to go a whole year to understand some things. You're not going to understand everything, but it's going to give you a good idea as to what you're getting into, if you don't already know, which you should already know, but, it's the way it is. But here, you follow this over a year's time period, you're going to get a good feel for things. You're going to see things in a different way. You're going to operate in a different way for the better. Okay. So I'm sorry, going back over here, then you've got your scripting. So even with having the information, scripting can sometimes be a challenge, in terms of what to say, how to say it. But we are giving you some guidance on that. Okay. Now, going down here, talking about when you're reaching out to new opportunities, people that you haven't worked with before, this is good information. But the question is, how do I even get the conversation started? How do I even approach them at the beginning? How do I just get things going? I mean, somebody I've never talked to before, somebody I've only talked to once, or, whatever the case, maybe I dropped the ball and, I need to get back in contact with them. I need to make up some ground here. We do have opportunities where we can help you on that and coach you on that as well. But I'm telling you, this information will really be a benefit to you when you are communicating with opportunities. Okay. And then again, as you go along a year later, yeah, you're going to be pretty darn good at it, and then when you get this information a year later, you're going to see it in a different way and you're going to know what to do with it. You're going to know what to do with it. We are a part of this economy. I mean, we just looked at the Dow Jones Transportation average. You know, our company name might not be listed on the top 20, but it is a representation of our industry. When they are not doing well, when that thing drops, we're going to feel it first. You know, we are going to feel that pain first. But at least you see it and you know it's coming. So you can look at that. So you see this information here and you know it's coming. And you can advise your client, just like if you said, hey, you know what, those tariffs are going in place. I never heard about it. What's happening? Tell me about the tariffs. What is that all about? You know, you can advise them on some of these things. Have a different conversation. It might be difficult, yeah, to have this conversation with them. You might only read this blurb here and not know where to go after that, you know, but I'm telling you, after a year's time period, you will. And at the same time, to help you out, we are going to actually have calls, group calls, where we can talk about this stuff more in depth. And when I say that, I'm talking about really how to use it to communicate it and how to use it within our business. I mean, this is good information to even have for your staff. You know, your staff can use this information. They can use it so then they can, you know, maybe even feel more connected with your clients, you know, and be connected even with different departments within your company. I mean, you might have just one salesperson, right? It might be just you, and that's okay. But this give you an edge that you need to get that business that you're looking for. And then as you do that and you do bring people on, you're going to be able to mold them, you know, guide them in a way that is going to be beneficial to them and to your company. You know, you're going to see things in a different way. Consumer behavior. So we have some indices, some indicators that are going to be under consumer behavior. That's going to be one of our focuses. And these are a couple of those indicators that are going to be under that. And then we're going to have, I don't know, I think it's like 4 others right now that we'll group indicators under. Okay. So I guess kind of like the stock exchange, you know, there's this breakdown. And then just understanding it is going to help you a lot. It's going to help you to use this to your advantage. Okay. You know, knowing about these different indices and the you know, the other ones that are involved. It's going to really be. And then you're going to, when you see this gauge, you're going to be like, huh, you might even think, okay, and this here is a real score here. And that was based upon, you know, the information that we had. And that was before the report came out on retail sales, you know. So this here can be forward thinking for a leading indicator. All right. So that is what this is all about. Now, what are we talking about here? We're talking about educating yourself, investing in yourself for your company, for the growth of your company. Oh, I didn't realize you could down there. So we're talking about educating yourself, educating your company, your people, so that your business can operate in a way that you can actually see growth. When the challenging times come around, you can see yourself working through that and actually growing and developing even through that time period. Being able to create some loyalty and just really be excited about what's to come. Instead of thinking, I'm just hoping things will change. You know, I'm just hoping that it will turn. Well, what if it doesn't? You know, what are you doing now about that? You know, what are you doing now? Who are you talking to now that you can share this information with? I mean, you can read it if you want and just read it off to them in that way. You can take part of this if you'd like and then put it in an email and send it out to them. You know, you can have a conversation and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to share that with you. Yeah. And you can call them back. What do you think? Engage them, you know, do it however you see fit. But we're going to have weekly get-togethers where we'll be able to talk about these things and be able to hear from others and see what's going on, see what they're up to, see what they're doing with this information and how they're able to use it for growth. You know, one of the things was our script. I remember a lot of our clients that took our course, they really, really, really liked our scripts. So that helped them a lot. You know, a lot of people are just nervous and say, I don't know what to say. I don't even know how to ask for someone. I don't know how to find the right person to talk to. Okay, here you go. Now you've got them. What do you do with it? Where do you go from there? Okay, so we're talking about building relationships. You know, we can't be isolated. Can't isolate yourself. You can if you want, but it's probably not the best thing to do, right? It's probably not the best thing to do to isolate yourself. All right. There was a lot of other things I wanted to talk about, but I'm not going to do that. But I hope that this information was helpful. Um, it is, we're going to be, you know, as the weeks go on, we'll put this information out, but we're also going to have some other forms of this. And I'd love to hear your feedback. Do you think it's going to be of help to you? Do you see how you can use it? Does it not make any sense to you? Does this look like garbage? You know, you give me whatever feedback you'd like to give me, and I'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email at paul.k@fr8connect.com. So that's paul.k@fr8connect.com. And then you can also give me a call at 866-342-0040, extension 109. Again, that's 866-342-0040, extension 109. And yeah, so let me see. I'm going to go back here. That's the same thing. Where we go? Let's see. Is this where we were at? Yeah, there's the there's that. Okay. I've got so much stuff up here. It looks like I probably lost it. I think this might be it. Here we go. Is this it? Nope. All right. Well, here we are. So as far as the Dow Jones goes, check that out. Love to hear what you have to say about that. Do you think that there's any validity to anything that I said today? If you have any input, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear it. I'm always interested in listening to other people. One of the things that I plan to do is to talk to some of these big wig trucking companies, you know, find out some additional information as to what's going on with them, be able to share that with you, you know, what their thoughts are. I've heard some reports, but, you know, it's always good to hear it from the horse's mouth and just kind of gain that insight and see what they're thinking, see what's going on there, what they're planning to be their next move. Even if their next move is to not make a move, you know, it could be wait and see just to see what other companies do. Um, you know, and obviously is to see what's going on at the White House. I mean, we hear that every day. We hear something every day, and that can make things challenging. And as far as that goes, speaking of the White House, and I promised myself I wasn't going to get into too much of that news, which I didn't. But the one thing that I would like to share with you all, with it being Good Friday and all, there is something that is um, that is said in the Bible, and it goes back to the Old Testament. And there's a couple of things. One is in Ecclesiastes, which it says, "There's nothing new under the sun." Right? There's nothing new under the sun. We might get excited and frantic about a thing, but this world has been there before, you know. And if there is something that happens new under the sun, I don't know what that would be, but maybe the sun doesn't rise tomorrow. But other than that, everything we go with, it's happened before. So we can get in a panic mode, or we can go look back at history, just like we can do that with these indices. Go back in history, look and see what happened back then that can bring some calm to today and some guidance, right? So again, there's nothing new under the sun. And when we look at that, um, there's there's also another quote I really like, and wrote an article a week or so ago and highlighted that quote, which is, um, how does it go? Let me see if I have it here. It's by Mark Twain. And see here. And there it is. History does not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. So when someone says that history is repeating itself. Not quite exactly, but we can definitely use history to help us out in a situation, right? Or they can give us some guidance as to what's going on today. Again, looking back on the trends or these indicators, we can look back and see what was going on at that time. The Spanish flu, it was not exactly COVID, but it was sure similar. I wrote about it, and put a side by side comparison showing how they compared. Very, very similar. What did people do back then? They did the same thing that we were doing today. They had on the masks, you know, they did all that stuff. They reduced travel. One of the things that the president, who was that? I forget who the president was at that time, but he tried to, because we were going through a world war at that time, he tried to, and that was what, 1917. So it was World War One. So he was trying to keep information from going out to show weakness as a country. So COVID was not talked about, or not COVID, I'm sorry, the Spanish flu was not put in the news as so devastating. They didn't want that information out there. And other countries did the same thing. But, as far as the Spanish flu goes, the belief is that that originated in the United States and actually in Kansas at one of the bases, is what my understanding is. I mean, that's one of the strong beliefs. But the Spanish flu was given the Spanish flu, the name, not the Kansas flu or the American flu, China flu, or whatever. It was not called that. It was called the Spanish flu. And the reason being is because Spain was the one that reported on it. So during the war, they were the ones that were reporting on this flu. And so it was then coined the Spanish flu. That's how that came about. But that was 100 years ago, and we can look back on that time period and find out, try to figure out what's going on today, and maybe bring some calmness to the situation, and help us to maneuver and move forward. So where I was going with that, was that one of the other things in the Bible is, if you go back to, I think it's First Samuel, and there's the introduction of King David. But prior to that introduction, King David, the people were crying out for a leader. They wanted a king. They wanted to be like the other nations. They wanted to be protected. You know, and Samuel was like, "Hey, God, they were wanting a king. They're not listening." He said, "Don't worry about it. They're not listening to me. I'll give them a king. And they'll regret it." And Saul came about. And once Saul did the things that he did, the people regretted it. I am not saying that Trump is Saul or anything like that. I am saying that there is a similarity there. So it just feels, history does not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. So just being open-minded is all I'm saying, and looking at history, because that's what I do. Again, I got my degree in economics. That's what I look at. And so that was something that came to mind. I'm sure many people have thought about that, but I do wish the president the best in terms of having this country really, really wanting to see this country do well. And so I wish him well, and I really hope his presidency does well for many people in this country as well as around the world. So, any rate, that's the end of that. No politics. And yeah, we are good. So please reach out to me, 866-342-0040, extension 109. Also, and if someone has a Adam, he uses, I think it's Yard, I forget what it's called, Yard Duck or something like that. I think I've tried that, but I'm gonna try that again because I need to get a more clear picture. And if you know of, a video conferencing platform that maybe I could check out. Please let me know. I'd love for you to let me know. My email address is paul.k@fr8connect.com, or you can leave it on the YouTube because I would love to know. And hey, Jadala, hey, Jerome, just some shout outs there. Also, Jeff, how you doing, Jeff? Casey, Adam, and who else? Who else? Who else? There's so many, and I know I'm going to leave some people off here. Um, Ray, how you doing, Ray? And uh, Mr. Rick, congratulations on your new baby boy. And there's a lot of other people out there, but everyone have a blessed weekend. All right, we'll see you next time. How do I do this? 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 Mm, uh, yeah. Okay. I think all right. Told you I'm gonna figure this thing out one day. All right, now I'm out. You guys have a blessed weekend. Take care.